I'm still living it today. This has been 40 years.
It was the day I lost my best friend.
Time does not heal all wounds. Not murder. It's still hell all the way to the bone.
Welcome to Texas, the land of cowboys, gunslingers, and outlaws. But beneath the facade of arid wastelands, the landscape of Texas may be so much more than you think it is. Recently, scientists revealed that Texas is not what we're being told. What secrets lie beneath the sprawling forests, mountain ranges, and canyons spread out across Texas? Join us in this video as we explore 15 terrifying discoveries hidden in Texas that will broaden your understanding of this captivating region. Number 15, the Sugar Land. 95. Texas, the land of the cowboys and gunslingers, its harsh landscape only inhabitable by the most daring of all men. But did you know that the Lone Star State is home to one of the most disturbing murder mysteries? Back in 2018, one of these chilling sites was discovered, sending shockwaves throughout the state of Texas. While backfilling a trench during the construction at the site of Fort Bend ISD's new James Reese Career and Technical Center in February 2018, workers discovered what appeared to be human remains. Over the next several months, and under the guidance and recommendations from the Texas Historical Commission, archaeologists were able to uncover several burial sites around the area. By the end of the search, the remains of 95 individuals had been found. But who were these men, and why were they buried in mass, unmarked graves? But researchers didn't need to go too far to find the source of this carnage. The land on which they were working itself was rife with stories of oppression and human exploitation dating back centuries. After an extensive exhumation process and further analysis of the remains, archaeologists were able to determine that the individuals buried on the property were likely convicted criminals who were leased to the sugar plantation by the government in order to provide cheap convict labor to the local plantation. You see, humans are notorious for always finding loopholes and concocting schemes to exploit other humans, and this is a truth as old as time. Following the national abolition of slavery in 1865, everyone knew it was illegal to own a human. But who would question them if those humans were convicts, just working on the plantation on lease from the state itself? Turns out that was a pretty effective loophole that afforded the owners of Bullhead Camp cheap labor, while also giving them the chance to maltreat the workers as they liked. All 95 of them were African American, and further laboratory analysis showed signs that the men had suffered from myriad diseases, repeated injuries, and even gunshot wounds that may be linked to escape attempts. In November 2019, each of the 95 remains were reburied in a more dignifying way. DNA analysis is also underway to identify any possible descendant of the deceased. This discovery encompasses the turbulent past of Texas that history is trying so hard to cover up. It is a testament to the brutal nature of humanity and the unforgivable damage that was done to many African Americans back when things were much more terrible than they are now. Number 14, the Texas Killing Fields. From a gory scene from back in the days of the slave trade to a more recent murder mystery, Texas is a gift that keeps on giving. For the families whose loved ones took their last breath in what is now known as the Texas Killing Fields, it remains a place of doom and gloom, mystery, and unsolved murders. This is Interstate Highway 45, one of the most mysterious places in the whole of Texas. This place, especially a 25-acre patch of land in League City, Texas, is not known for its scenic views and picturesque landscape. No, what makes them famous are the myriads of unsolved murders that seem to have taken place on these unholy grounds. You see, since the early 1970s, over 30 bodies have been found, mainly girls and young women, aged between 12 and 25 years. If the ground could talk, it would speak of the abominable things and unimaginable terror these women faced at the hands of their assailants before they gave up the ghost. But there's another eerie part to this story. You see, most of the women who have gone missing in these killing fields seem to possess some shared physical features, including similar hairstyles and color. It seems as though they were being targeted based on their similarities with former victims. Despite intensive efforts to investigate the murders by the League City, Texas Police Department, and even the FBI, just a handful of these murders have been solved. The place has been described as the perfect place to kill somebody and get away with it. For the many families who lost their loved ones to the menace of these killing fields, closure is the most important goal, although it remains elusive for most of them. Hopefully, one day authorities can finally solve the mystery behind these horrific killings, bringing peace to the deceased and justice for the families they left behind. Number 13. The Aurora UFO Incident. In the rich tapestry of Texan history, murder mysteries are not the only subject of intrigue. This rich landscape also boasts of an event that is literally out of this world. Follow us back to April 19, 1897, one of the most unforgettable dates in the history of Aurora, Texas. Now, you may not be a believer in the existence of extraterrestrial life, but there is no denying that what transpired on this day has continued to defy any earthly explanations. On April 17, 1897, the people of Aurora, Texas were visited by what seemed to be an extraterrestrial guest. Locals reported seeing a streak of light traveling across the sky. When the strange light eventually made landfall, it was discovered that this was no earthly vessel. According to the stories borne by the locals from generation to generation, a UFO had crashed on a farm after hitting a windmill located on the property of Judge J.S. Proctor at around 6 a.m. local time. An Army Signal Service officer by the name of T.J. Weems reported that the pilot of the aircraft was, in his words, not of this world. At the time, many even speculated that the craft and the pilot had originated from Mars. Unfortunately, he couldn't really identify himself, as he was dead on the spot. The alien visitor was then said to have been buried in a marked grave in a nearby cemetery, according to Christian rites, although the tombstone had been removed for a long time now. The spacecraft wreckage was also supposedly dumped into a nearby well, located under the windmill that caused the crash, although many naysayers have punched holes in this story, claiming that it had been fabricated to bring interest to the town. But you should know that despite the many investigations that have been conducted towards debunking this incident, it has all resulted in futility. Was this a real alien visitation that has been shielded from us for over 100 years? Why has history turned a blind eye to this obvious evidence of extraterrestrial life? This event remains one of the most unforgettable experiences in Texas and solidified the status of the region as a subject of much intrigue and mystery. Number 12. Deadliest natural disaster in the history of the United States. The city of Galvaston, Texas will always remember the hurricane season of 1900. It was the last days of the 18th century and everyone was in high spirits, with hopes that the next 100 years would bring much prosperity to the region. The 19th century had brought much woe to pretty much everywhere in the world. From natural disasters to economic crises, everyone around the world was suffering from one thing or the other. But before it packed up and left, the century had one last blow to deal, and Texas was the target. On August 27, 1900, a ship east of the Windward Islands detected what seemed to be a tropical cyclone. By September 2, the system made landfall in the Dominican Republic. It then weakened a little bit while crossing Hispaniola, but later that day, it regained massive strength as it re-emerged in the Caribbean Sea. Everywhere this storm went, it brought with it severe destruction, ravaging the land and leveling infrastructure on its path. But the mayhem was far from over. On September 8, 1900, around 8 p.m. local time, the storm, which had now grown into a Category 4 hurricane, made landfall in Galveston, Texas. What happened next remains one of the most horrific scenes ever caused by a natural disaster. In the history of making, never has a land been ravaged by natural forces, like with the Galveston disaster. Buildings gave way under the force of the mighty storm. The coastline and the island city were inundated with 8 to 12 feet of water, as nature unleashed its destructive force on the landscape. Some 7,000 buildings were leveled in Galveston, including homes, government properties, and business buildings. Over 10,000 people were left homeless, out of a population less than 38,000. The scale of the destruction was so staggering. Casualty figures in the United States were pegged at around 10,000, the majority of which occurred in Galveston, Texas. This disastrous event has been regarded as the deadliest natural disaster in the history of the United States. It took about $1.25 billion in today's money to repair the damage caused by this tragedy. Although the city had fully recovered from the hurricane, after all, it's been over 100 years, but the damage done will remain in the hearts of everyone who lost a loved one, a home, or a sense of security in those days. Number 11. The 1947 Texas City disaster. Natural disasters are usually very destructive, but sometimes the greatest tragedies result from human errors and uncontrollable accidents. On April 16, 1947, a massive explosion rocked the port of Texas City in Texas, the likes of which the city had not experienced since its creation. To give you a better perspective of how destructive this explosion was, consider that it has been regarded as one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history. This should give you a scale of the destruction and loss that was left in his wake. But this was no targeted attack. Let us take you back to the morning of the incident as we attempt to unravel the cycle of events that eventually led to the explosion. Everything started when a mysterious fire broke out on board the French-registered vessel SS Grand Camp. The ship was docked at port while carrying a cargo of 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate. On a normal day, the fire could have been easily contained by the personnel on board, but it seemed that the disaster was destined to take place. The following sequence of events eventually culminated in a massive explosion that set up a chain reaction of explosions and fires aboard other ships in the port. What compounded the problems even more was when the fire broke out in a nearby oil storage facility. Smoke clouds billowed over the night sky, reminiscent of a nuclear explosion. About 501 people were recorded dead. This included every single member of Texas City's volunteer fire department, except for one. In Texas's turbulent past, this event remains a hallmark, a testament to the terrible disasters that have plagued the state over the years. It also resulted on several lawsuits against the United States, and stricter regulations were put in place in order to avoid the recurrence of such a tragic incident. Number 10. The mysterious cattle mutilations. Away from natural disasters, to a more recent mysterious occurrence that had continued to confound everyone, defying every possible explanation. No one knows who's responsible for the murderous rampage of cows in Texas, but whoever it is probably doing a pretty good job at hiding their steps. Earlier in 2023, 3 counties in Texas witnessed the mysterious mutilation of 7 cows within a couple of weeks. While this may seem like it could have been perpetrated by cattle thieves and petty criminals, the precision of some of these mutilations creates a very eerie scene. For one, just a few parts of the cattle are usually missing by the time the bodies are found the next morning. Sometimes it's the genitals or the eyes, but the common denominator was that each cow was missing a tongue. Here's the most mysterious part, however. You see, in all these reported cases, there have been no signs of blood spillage, no footprints or tracks, and even more disturbing is the lack of signs of struggle. It's almost as though whoever was perpetrating these crimes was out of this world. What's more, the level of precision observed in these mutilations is simply astounding. The cuts look like they were made by a master surgeon who would remove the hide around the cow's mouth on one side, leaving the meat under the removed hide untouched. To further deepen the mystery, no predators or birds had scavenged the remains of these animals, which you will agree is pretty strange. Locals have resorted to several theories as they try to grapple with this anomaly. Could this be the work of aliens or a secret government experiment? Or maybe it's the work of a mysterious secret cult conducting rituals on the livestock. Nobody has the answers for now, but authorities are hopeful that someday soon something will turn up and the enigma surrounding these mutilations will be demystified. Number 9. Galvaston Bay Oil Spill. Throughout history, Texas has been famous for the abundance of oil wells, bringing much prosperity to the region. But this also comes at a huge risk. Oil spills, capable of causing serious damage to the aquatic ecosystem, often occur in this region. Recently, in March 2014, over 150,000 gallons of heavy fuel oil spilled into the Houston Ship Channel. This was due to a collision between an oil barge and a ship. While this was a very huge financial loss, the damage to the environment is even more devastating. This one was even particularly severe, as about 168,000 gallons of bunker fuel, which everybody knows is the thick bottom of the barrel cheap fuel oil used for powering big ships, was released into the ocean. Within just a few days, the effects of the spill had been felt 12 miles offshore into the Gulf of Mexico. But that's not all. Globs of tar and oil were also seen along the shore of Texas City and the beaches located in the area. Oil spills have been a menace to our ecosystem since humans discovered the power of fossil fuels. The most noticeable effect of this particular incident was on the shorebirds. In total, the Coast Guard recovered about 329 oiled birds in the area, many of which were dead. These birds come in contact with the spilled oil as it washes ashore, and the consequences of ingesting the oil are often fatal. Luckily, cleanup efforts were immediately launched, although so little can be done to combat the effects of the spill. Our planet is dying, and it is almost entirely our fault. This incident sparked global debate about the effects of oil spillage on the aquatic ecosystem and the need to enforce stricter regulations in the oil mining and maritime industry. Number 8, the Waco Siege. Here's another horrifying story that might give you a glimpse into the tumultuous history of Texas. Back in 1993, a religious cult known as the Branch Davidians engaged the Texas state law enforcement officials and the FBI in a prolonged gunfight between February 28 and April 19. The Branch Davidians, a group led by David Koresh, were under the suspicion of stockpiling illegal weapons, which led the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to obtain a search warrant for their headquarters, which was located at Mount Carmel Center Ranch, McLennan County, just 13 miles northeast of Waco. But nothing could have prepared the officers for the scenes that were about to unfold. What started as a simple search and arrest warrant became a bloody gunfight. You see, on the day of the raid, the ATF had initially planned to conduct a sudden daylight operation on the premises, catching the people unaware. But coincidentally, a TV reporter who had been tipped off about the raid and was on his way to cover the incident asked for directions from a U.S. Postal Service mail carrier, unknown to him that the man was actually Koresh's brother-in-law. So, the group was locked and loaded by the time the cops arrived. By the time the smoke cleared on the first day, 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians were dead. This was the beginning of a 51-day siege by the FBI, an event that remains one of the most baffling occurrences to ever take place in Texas. This was a supposed religious organization with a stockpile of arms, capable of exchanging fire with the FBI. It definitely raised some serious concerns about the thin line between religious freedom and extremism. On April 19, 1993, the FBI finally got tired of the negotiations and launched a tear gas attack on the building in an attempt to force the Branch Davidians out. Shortly after, the Mount Carmel Center became engulfed in an inferno, which resulted in the death of 76 Branch Davidians, including 25 children, 2 pregnant women, and the leader of the group, David Koresh. Although many people have pointed accusing fingers at the FBI for starting the fire, this is actually not true. According to audio surveillance recordings, Koresh and others can be heard discussing pouring more fuel on piles of hay as the fire started. Aerial footage also showed that there were at least 3 simultaneous ignition points at different locations in the building. No one can really tell the rationale behind the decision to set the building ablaze, but this disaster remains forever etched in the memories of every Texan. It reminds us that even in religious circles, extremism can slowly creep in, overshadowing the main essence of the faith. Number 7. Deetta Sinkholes. One of the many menacing occurrences that are common in Texas is the issue of sinkholes. These massive holes in the ground often spring out of nowhere, swallowing whatever was on the surface before their appearance into the abyss. They can occur in city centers, rural areas, basically anywhere and at any time. In 2008, a massive sinkhole burst through Deetta, a small town about an hour east of Houston. This was no small hole in the ground. What appeared was a terrifying sinkhole, stretching 600 feet across and some 75 feet deep. It was even regarded as one of the largest sinkholes in the state of Texas. But after its emergence, everything seemingly died down. The hole even became filled with water and became the town's little pond. For 15 years, residents and researchers were at peace as they believed the sinkhole would not expand further. But to everyone's surprise, in April 2023, another massive sinkhole appeared right next to the first one. This brought with it a fresh wave of concern and curiosity. According to eyewitness accounts, the ground made a terrifying noise as the sinkhole opened up, swallowing trucks, farm equipment, oil tanks, as well as several trees. These sinkholes often form when groundwater dissolves the rocks in the ground, creating a void. The ground then opens up, creating a cavernous hole in the heart of the earth. Preventive measures are currently being taken in order to prevent many more sinkholes from forming around the Texan region. Number 6. Marfa Lights. From terrifying natural occurrences to mysterious unnatural phenomena. You've probably heard of the Marfa ghost lights, a couple of weird, strange lights usually reported in West Texas. The first recorded sighting was in 1883 when a young cowhand by the name of Robert Reed Ellison noticed a flickering light while driving cattle through Paisano Pass. Initially, he thought the light was probably from the campfire of the Apache. But as the other settlers investigated, they discovered something absolutely eerie. There were no ashes or even any evidence of campsite. This threw everyone in disarray, and till today, no explanations have been provided to explain this strange phenomenon. Conspiracy theorists and ufologists have been thrown into a frenzy as they scrambled to unravel the mystery behind the lights. Many people have cited atmospheric phenomena as the source of the lights, while a couple of people believe that they're just car lights. But all these explanations are usually deemed insufficient. Could these lights have extraterrestrial origins, as many claim? Or how else are we supposed to wrap our heads around this enigma? The enigma surrounding the Marfa Lights remains an unsolved mystery, which continues to baffle both seasoned scientists and amateur paranormal researchers alike. Before we go on with the rest of the video, here's our subscribers' pick for today. Texas, the Lone Star State, may not be exactly what you think it is. Many people often mistake the Texan landscape as a simple plain, but in fact the Lone Star State is as diversified as they come. This fascinating region is filled with woodlands, desert areas, canyons, and other natural wonders. On one hand, you've got the Sam Houston National Park, filled with giant trees, beautiful water bodies, and booming wildlife, Sandy Creek, W.G. Jones State Forest, and other woodlands and forests. On the other hand, you have canyons like the Palo Duro Canyon State Park and its towering national monument, the Santa Elena Canyon, Boquilis Canyon, and many other natural wonders. Beyond the stereotypical image of a plain wasteland, Texas is indeed a rich landscape, filled with intrigues and beautiful sceneries. Which of these natural wonders would you like to visit? Let us know in the comments. Now that we're done with that, let's get back to more intriguing discoveries. Number 5. Ghost towns. The state of Texas is famous for its abundance of ghost towns. If you're looking to revisit the history of the once bustling mining towns of the United States, then Texas is probably the best place to go. In nearly every region of the state, you will find ghost towns that fit into the stereotypical image of the Wild West. This is due in part to the unpredictability of the oil industry, the mining industry, the agricultural industry, and the railroad industry, which were responsible for the establishment of these towns in the first place. There's Lobo, an abandoned town located along Highway 90, which boasts a staggering population of about 15 people, so you probably won't be alone on your tour. Back in the 1800s, this town was the only source of water for miles in the arid wasteland of the Wild West, which was why it became so famous at the time. Then there's Terlingua, which is probably one of the best-known ghost towns in Texas. There's also Glen Rio, Barstow, Indianola, and Catarina, to mention a few. These ghost towns stand as testaments to the mining industry, which gave the United States a huge shove in economic and financial growth, cementing its place as one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Number 4. World War I ships. Although it's been over 100 years since the end of the First World War, sometimes relics of the conflicts rear their heads in many places around the world, reminding us of a turbulent past when the whole world was up in flames. 5 of such relics were found in Texas, as the heavy droughts reduced the water level of the Neches River in southeastern Texas. In August 2023, a 70-year-old amateur shipwreck hunter by the name of Bill Milner discovered 5 World War II ships following the decline in the Neches River. According to Milner, finding the ships was actually by accident. He had been scouring the river on a jet ski while remaining skeptical about finding anything of value when he spotted the ships. So, why exactly were these ships abandoned in the river, you ask? Well, according to historians, during the First World War, Southeast Texas was used as a shipbuilding hub, producing as many crafts as possible to sustain the war efforts. But as the war ended in 1918, many of the newly built wooden ships had no further use and were just basically abandoned in places like the Neches River. So there's a high chance that the 5 discovered ships never even saw combat. Number 3. The rock walls of Rockwall, Texas. Many people believe that Texas was built on top of an ancient civilization, and while many people discount this as a myth, it is pretty hard to explain these rock walls that have been found in Rockwall County, Texas. You see, right underneath this region, and many parts of Dallas County, you will find mineral stones, stacked in the semblance of a wall. These pale stones are usually long and narrow, and appear to have been separated by a layer of sediment. This probably means they were intentionally placed for a practical purpose, and not just some natural creation. Since 1852, when it was first unearthed, the rock walls have been a subject of intrigue and speculation. However, even though it's been many, many years, no one has been able to explain the origin of these stones. So, we return to the original question. Was Texas built on top of an ancient civilization, or is there a simpler explanation for this phenomenon? The answer remains elusive. Number 2. Volcanoes in Texas. Did you know that Texas is home to about 200 volcanoes? Yes, it may seem unlikely that such a region would be dominated by these lava-guzzling structures, but all around Texas, you will find them scattered across the landscape. Before you panic, you should know that in spite of the sheer number of volcanoes present in the Lone Star State, the possibility of an eruption anytime soon is pretty slim. In fact, scientists believe that the last time there was a volcanic eruption in Texas was some 30 million years ago. The largest volcano in Texas is known as Pilot Knob. Although it is now an extinct volcano, Pilot Knob used to be active in what is now known as Central Texas. Then there's Three Dike Hill, located in Big Bend Ranch State Park, the last volcano to erupt in the state, some 27 million years ago. Thankfully, all these volcanoes are now extinct, so we're not in any imminent danger of a fiery shower. Number 1. Texas Archaeological Sites. Did you know that there are over 65,000 archaeological sites in Texas? This arid landscape is home to some of the oldest artifacts ever discovered in the world. The sites that housed these discoveries for thousands or even millions of years have been scoured from every angle by seasoned archaeologists, as they reimagine the history of our planet piece by piece. There's the Alamo, home to many archaeological investigations since 1966. This site is particularly rich in archaeological discoveries, owing to its linkage to bloody battles and other historical events. Then there's the beautiful pictographs left behind by the settlers, who called the limestone cliffs of Big Bend National Park thousands of years ago. Not to mention the Burro Mesa Archaeological District at the Big Bend National Park, which includes a quarry used by Native Americans as a source of chert when building chipped stone tools. These archaeological sites stand as a testament to the rich history of the Lone Star State, and till today, Texas remains a gift that keeps on giving. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.